Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today, we're tackling something that I think is on a lot of people's minds, especially as we, get a little bit older, and that's retirement planning.
It's a big one.
Yeah, and it can feel kind of overwhelming, right?
Definitely. It's one of those things that's easy to put off.
Exactly. So we're going to try to break it down today and hopefully make it feel a little less intimidating.
Sounds good.
So for this deep dive, we're focusing on a podcast transcript that's all about financial planning. And this one's specifically targeted at folks in that 55 to 64 age range. So kind of right on the cusp of retirement for many people.
Yeah, that's a crucial time to really get serious about planning.
For sure.
Hmm.
And the source material we're looking at lays out a 7-step roadmap. So we'll try to walk through each of those steps and pull out some of the key insights.
All right, let's dive in.
Okay. So step 1 is all about assessing your financial health. Figuring out where you stand right now. Seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just checking your bank balance. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's not just about looking at your savings account. It's about taking stock of all your potential income sources for retirement.
Okay. So beyond just your retirement accounts then, what else are we talking about here?
Well, think about things like rental properties. If you have any buds, those can generate income. Annuities are another possibility. And even, maybe you're thinking about doing some part-time work in retirement just to stay active or bring in a little extra cash.
So it's really about considering all the options and casting a wide net.
Exactly. It's about getting a complete picture of your potential income streams.
Okay, makes sense. But of course, income is only half the equation.
Right.
We also need to figure out how much we'll actually be spending in retirement.
Absolutely. Got to have that budget, right?
Exactly. So how do we even begin to estimate our retirement expenses? It feels like a total guessing game.
Well, it is to some extent, but there are ways to make it a more educated guess. You want to start by looking at your current spending habits. Track where your money is going now.
Okay, so kind of like a financial audit of your current life.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can start to think about how those expenses might change in retirement. Some things might go down like, your commute costs if you're not working anymore.
Yeah, that's true. No more gas money or train tickets every day.
But other expenses might actually go up. Healthcare is a big one that tends to increase for most people as they age.
Yeah, healthcare costs. That's something that I think a lot of people don't fully factor in when they're thinking about retirement.
Yeah, it's definitely a major consideration. So a realistic budget has to account for those potential increases.
Okay, so we've assessed our financial health, at least gotten a good starting point. That's step one. What comes next on this retirement roadmap?
Step 2 is all about maximizing those retirement contributions, especially for those 50 and older.
Ah, yes. The catch-up contributions, I've heard about those, but honestly haven't really looked into the specifics. What are we talking about here?
Well, in 2025, you can actually contribute an extra $7,500 to your 401k and an extra $1,000 to your IRA.
Wow. Okay, that's significant. So those catch-up contributions really can make a big difference, especially as you get closer to retirement.
Absolutely. It's a great way to boost your savings in those later years.
And speaking of maximizing contributions, don't forget about those employer matching programs. If your company offers a match, make sure you're taking full advantage of that.
It's basically free money, right?
Exactly. Can't let that slip away. All right, so we've talked about assessing our finances and maximizing contributions. Now, step 3 takes us into the sometimes uncomfortable territory of debt.
Yes. Debt. The elephant in the room.
Sometimes it feels that way. So how do we tackle this beast? Should we be focusing on paying off our mortgage before retirement?
That's a common goal,
Hmm,
but strategically speaking, it might not always be the best approach.
really? Why not? I mean, it seems like getting rid of that mortgage payment would free up a lot of cash flow in retirement.
It definitely would, but often it makes more sense to prioritize high-interest debt first. Things like credit cards, personal loans. Those can really eat into your savings.
Ah, I see. So it's about tackling the most expensive debt first and then working our way down the list.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You want to minimize the amount of interest you're paying over the long term.
Okay, that makes sense. And even if we can't completely eliminate the mortgage before retirement, at least making a dent in it can be a good thing.
Absolutely. It can make a big difference both financially and psychologically.
Okay, so debt is handled. At least we have a plan for it. Now, on to step 4. This is all about Social Security, which I think a lot of people find confusing.
It can definitely be a bit of a maze.
So what's the most important thing for our listeners to know about Social Security?
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that when you start claiming benefits, has a huge impact on how much you receive each month.
Okay, so it's not just about reaching a certain age. There's more to it than that.
Exactly. You can actually start claiming as early as 62, but your benefits will be permanently reduced.
So there's a trade-off there. You get the money sooner, but you get less of it overall.
Right. And then there's something called your full retirement age, which is somewhere between 66 and 67, depending on when you were born.
Hmm.
If you wait until your full retirement age, you'll get a larger monthly payment.
Okay, so it pays to be patient, literally.
And then if you can hold off even longer until age 70, your benefits will be even higher.
Wow, so the longer you wait, the more you get each month. That's pretty significant.
It really is. So understanding those nuances and figuring out the best time to claim can make a big difference in your overall retirement income.
Okay, so there's clearly a lot to consider when it comes to Social Security. We'll definitely have to dig into that a bit more later on. But for now, let's move on to step 5, which is all about reviewing healthcare options.
Yes, healthcare. That's another big one that people sometimes overlook.
So where do we even begin? Healthcare can feel like a whole other world to navigate.
It can be, but taking the time to understand it is crucial, especially as we approach retirement.
So what are the key things we need to be thinking about here?
Well, first and foremost, you need to familiarize yourself with Medicare. Understand the enrollment periods, the coverage options, all that good stuff.
Medicare. Okay, so we need to be proactive about learning how that whole system works.
Exactly. Because if you miss certain deadlines or don't understand the rules, you could end up facing penalties or not having the coverage you need.
Yikes. Okay, so Medicare is a must learn. Are there any other healthcare considerations we should be thinking about?
Yeah, you might want to explore supplemental insurance. That can help cover costs that Medicare doesn't. And depending on your situation, a long-term care policy could be something to consider as well.
Okay, so healthcare is definitely multi-layered and a bit complicated, but the bottom line is we need to plan ahead and understand our options.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered healthcare. Now let's move on to step 6 in our retirement planning roadmap. This one's all about investments.
Investments. Okay, so as we get closer to retirement, do we need to change up our investment strategies from our younger years?
Generally speaking, yes. It's usually a good idea to transition to a more conservative approach as you near retirement.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Are we talking about moving away from riskier investments like stocks?
Yeah, exactly. You'll probably want to increase your allocation to bonds, which tend to be less volatile than stocks, and reduce your exposure to those high-risk, high-growth investments.
So it's about protecting your savings and minimizing the risk of big losses as you get closer to needing that money.
Exactly. You don't want to be caught off guard by a sudden market downturn right when you're about to retire.
That makes sense. And what about diversification? Is that still as important as it was when we were younger?
Diversification is always crucial. It helps protect your portfolio from market fluctuations no matter what your age.
So we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Exactly. Spread that risk around.
Okay, diversification noted. All right, we're on to the final step in our retirement planning journey. Step 7. This is all about creating a withdrawal plan. So how do we actually make those hard-earned savings last throughout retirement?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Literally. So are there any guidelines or rules of thumb that we can follow?
Well, one common guideline is the 4% rule. It suggests withdrawing no more than 4% of your savings annually.
The 4% rule. Okay, I've heard of that, but I'm not really sure what the thinking is behind that number.
Basically, it's designed to help create a sustainable income stream that will likely last for 30 years or more.
Ah, okay. So it's based on some pretty solid research and historical data.
Exactly. It takes into account things like inflation and average market returns.
So it's not just a random number. It's a pretty well thought out guideline.
Yeah, it's a good starting point. But of course, everyone's situation is different, so
Okay.
you might need to adjust it based on your individual circumstances.
Right. Okay, so the 4% rule is a helpful guideline. But are there any other things we should keep in mind when creating our withdrawal plan?
Absolutely. One important tip is to start withdrawing from your taxable accounts first. That allows your tax-advantaged accounts like 401ks and IRAs to continue growing tax-deferred.
Ah, okay. So it's about strategically managing those different types of accounts to maximize growth and minimize taxes.
Exactly. And then you also need to be aware of required minimum distributions, or RMDs.
RMDs. Those sound familiar, but I need a refresher. Can you explain what those are and why they're important?
Sure. So RMDs are the minimum amount you're required to withdraw from your tax-advantaged retirement accounts each year. And this starts at age 73.
Ah, okay. So even though it's our money, there are rules about when we can start tapping into those funds.
That's right. The government wants to make sure you eventually pay taxes on those tax-deferred savings.
Makes sense. Okay, so understanding those RMD rules is crucial when we're mapping out our withdrawal strategy.
Definitely. It's all part of the planning process.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground here, from assessing our financial health to creating a withdrawal plan, and it seems like we've just scratched the surface.
We have. It's a lot to take in.
It is. But hopefully this overview has given our listeners a good foundation to build upon.
I hope so. It's about empowering people to take control of their retirement planning.
Well said. And remember, everyone, this is just the beginning. We'll be back after a short break to dive deeper into some of these topics and explore additional resources that can help you plan for a successful and fulfilling retirement. So stay tuned.
All right, we're back and ready to dig a little deeper into some of these retirement planning steps. We've got our roadmap, but I think it's fair to say that, it can still feel a little overwhelming. Where do we even begin?
Well, I think it goes back to that foundation we talked about, assessing your financial health. It's like building a house. You can't start constructing the walls without a solid foundation in place.
Okay, so it's about getting a clear picture of our current financial situation before we make any big decisions. Makes sense. But what does that process actually look like?
Think of it as gathering all the pieces of your financial puzzle. So you'll want to collect all your financial documents, bank statements, investment account summaries. Make a list of all your assets, your home, any other real estate you own. Value of your retirement accounts. Don't forget about your debts, too. List those out as well. Okay, so it sounds like a pretty thorough audit of our finances. Anything else we should be thinking about during this assessment phase?
Well, I think it's helpful to start thinking about your future expenses.
Yeah.
Projecting your retirement expenses can be really helpful as accurately as possible. Of course, it's impossible to predict everything, but having at least a general idea of how much you'll need to cover your living expenses in retirement is essential.
Okay, so once we have that solid foundation, how do we decide which of these other steps to prioritize? I mean, they all seem pretty important.
You're right. They are all interconnected. The order you tackle them might depend on your individual circumstances. For someone who's carrying a lot of high-interest debt, focusing on step 3, paying that down, might be the most impactful place to start.
Yeah, that makes sense. And for someone who's feeling pretty good about their debt situation, maybe they jump ahead and explore Social Security claiming strategies or dig deeper into Medicare options.
Exactly. It's all about figuring out what makes the most sense for your unique situation.
So there's no one-size-fits-all approach to retirement planning.
Definitely not.
We've covered a lot of ground today, but I know there's always more to learn. What resources would you recommend for someone who wants to dive deeper into some of these topics?
Oh, the good news is there are tons of fantastic resources out there. The Social Security Administration website is a great place to start if you want to learn more about maximizing your benefits. They even have calculators that let you estimate your payments based on different claiming ages. Have you ever used those calculators?
I have, actually. I played around with one recently just to kind of get a sense of how different claiming ages could impact my monthly benefits. It was pretty eye-opening to see how much of a difference a few years can make.
Yeah, those calculators can be really helpful. And if you want to understand the ins and outs of Medicare, Medicare.gov is the ultimate resource. You can find detailed information on enrollment periods, coverage options, costs. It can feel overwhelming at first, but just remember, you don't have to become an expert overnight. Just start by focusing on the areas that are most relevant to you.
Break it down into bite-sized pieces.
Exactly.
And for those who are intrigued by the 4% rule and want to explore different withdrawal strategies, are there any specific resources you'd recommend?
There's a wealth of information out there on retirement income planning. One book that's considered a classic is The 4% Rule by William Bengen. He's the financial advisor who originally developed the concept. It delves into the reasoning behind the rule and provides guidance on applying it in different situations.
So it's always helpful to go back to the source.
Absolutely.
Now, we've focused a lot on the financial aspects of retirement planning, but I think it's equally important to consider the non-financial side of things as well.
I completely agree. Retirement is about so much more than just money. It's about lifestyle purpose, overall well-being.
It's about enjoying those golden years.
Exactly.
So what are some of those non-financial things people should be thinking about as they approach this new chapter in their lives?
Well, one of the biggest shifts in retirement is how you spend your time. Instead of structuring your days around work, you have the freedom to pursue activities that bring you joy and fulfillment.
It's like a blank canvas. You get to paint your days however you want.
Exactly. It's a chance to reconnect with passions you might have put on hold during your working years or explore new interests you've always been curious about. What are some things you've always wanted to do but haven't had the time for?
Oh, where do I even begin? Travel is definitely high on my list. I've always dreamed of taking a cross-country road trip, stopping at all those quirky roadside attractions along the way. And I'd love to take some cooking classes, learn how to make authentic pasta from scratch.
Those sound like fantastic goals. And it's never too early to start brainstorming those dream retirement activities.
Yeah.
Even if you're years away from retirement, having those things to look forward to can add a lot of excitement and motivation to your planning process.
It's like having a vision board for your future self.
I love that analogy.
It's not all about solo pursuits, though, right? Social connections also play a huge role in our well-being, especially in retirement.
Absolutely. Maintaining and nurturing those relationships with friends and family becomes even more important as we age. And it's also a great time to get involved in your community or join groups that align with your interests.
So it's about finding those communities that resonate with us and allow us to connect with like-minded people.
Exactly. And those social connections aren't just good for our emotional well-being, they're also beneficial for our physical health.
Right. We know that strong social ties can have a positive impact on everything from heart health to cognitive function.
It's true. So nurturing those relationships is an investment in our overall well-being.
Okay, what about health and wellness in general? I imagine those become even more crucial as we age.
You're absolutely right. Taking care of your physical health through regular exercise, a healthy diet, managing any existing health conditions. It's all vital for enjoying a long and fulfilling retirement.
It's not just about having the financial means to retire, but also having the physical and mental capacity to make the most of those years.
Well said. You want to be active and engaged, not sidelined by health issues.
Exactly. Speaking of embracing new adventures, one thing I've been thinking about lately is the importance of purpose in retirement. It's not necessarily about having a traditional job, but finding something that gives you a reason to get up in the morning, something that makes you feel valued and engaged.
You've hit on a really important point. That sense of purpose can be a powerful driver of happiness and well-being in retirement. It could be volunteering your time to a cause you care about, pursuing a creative hobby, mentoring younger generations, or even starting a small business.
I love those examples.
Yeah,
It's inspiring to think about all the possibilities that retirement opens up. It's not an end. It's a new beginning, a chance to explore new avenues and make a meaningful contribution in a way that maybe we couldn't during our working years.
I couldn't agree more. Retirement is an opportunity to redefine what success looks like and create a life that aligns with your values and passions.
This conversation has really expanded my thinking about retirement. It's not just about reaching a financial finish line, but embracing a new phase of life with intention and purpose, while also taking care of our physical and emotional well-being. What are your final thoughts for our listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed by all this information?
I'd say remember that you don't have to have all the answers right now. Retirement planning is a process, and it's okay to take it one step at a time. Just start by focusing on those areas that feel most pressing or relevant to your current situation. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. There are resources available to help you every step of the way.
That's reassuring to hear. It's about breaking down the overwhelm and focusing on those manageable steps we can take today to move towards a secure and fulfilling retirement.
Exactly. And remember, even small steps can make a big difference in the long run. The key is to just get started.
Well said. And on that note, we'll be back after a short break to wrap up our deep dive into retirement planning with some final words of wisdom and actionable tips for our listeners. So stay tuned.
We're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into retirement planning. We've covered a lot of ground today, from, those nitty-gritty financial strategies to the maybe a little bit more, touchy-feely stuff like the importance of purpose and well-being. What are some of the key things you hope our listeners are taking away from this conversation?
Well, I hope they've gained a sense of empowerment, realizing that retirement planning doesn't have to be this big, scary monster. It's really about, taking control of your future and making choices that align with your vision for this next chapter.
Yeah, I love that. Taking control
Mhm.
and, creating a retirement that truly reflects, who you are and what you value. It's not just about, surviving. It's about thriving. Exactly. And I hope our listeners have also, gained some practical tools and knowledge that they can start applying today, whether it's taking a closer look at those Social Security claiming options, exploring Medicare resources, or just, creating a budget that reflects their retirement goals.
Mm.
There are steps we could all take to, start moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. It's about taking action, even if it's just one small step at a time. What would you say is the most important piece of advice for someone who's feeling, maybe a little overwhelmed or unsure of where to begin?
Don't let fear or procrastination paralyze you. Just start by identifying one area that feels manageable and focus on making progress in that area. Maybe it's scheduling consultation with a financial advisor or dedicating an hour this week to researching Medicare options. Even those small steps can create momentum and build confidence.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Break it down into those bite-sized pieces and celebrate those small wins along the way. And remember, you don't have to do this alone. There are resources available, from financial professionals to online communities to support you on this journey.
Absolutely. And don't underestimate the power of connecting with others who are going through similar experiences.
Mhm.
Sharing knowledge, insights, even just venting frustrations can make a huge difference.
It's about building that community of support and learning from each other's experiences. We've talked a lot about, the practical steps of retirement planning, but I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, the importance of, those non-financial aspects. How can we make sure that we're not just, financially prepared for retirement, but also emotionally and mentally prepared for this, pretty significant life transition?
It's about cultivating those aspects of our lives that bring us joy, purpose, and connection. Think about the activities, the relationships, the goals that light you up and make you feel alive. How can you weave those elements into your retirement vision?
It's like creating a blueprint for a life that feels, meaningful and fulfilling, not just a plan for managing our money. And I think that's a really beautiful way to think about retirement. It's not an ending, it's a new beginning, an opportunity to, rewrite our stories and create a life that truly reflects who we are.
I couldn't agree more. And remember, this is your journey. There's no right or wrong way to approach retirement. The key is to be intentional, to make choices that align with your values, and to embrace the adventure that lies ahead.
Well said. We hope this deep dive has provided you with, valuable insights and inspiration as you embark on your own retirement planning journey. Remember, it's never too early or too late to start taking control of your future.
And if you enjoyed this conversation, we encourage you to share with friends or family members who might also be thinking about their retirement. Let's create a culture of open dialogue and support around this important topic.
That's a great idea. And until next time, happy planning, everyone.